Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. Barry Sears, and I'd like to thank you all for coming out tonight to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology to hear me speak on the dangers of consuming seafood while pregnant. The choices that we make on a dietary level will impact how our body functions and performs in the future. As adults, we all understand that our choices have consequences. And today I'm going to explain how consuming seafood while pregnant can affect the mother, the fetus, and the child. I believe seafood is an extremely beneficial part of your diet when consumed in proper amounts. Towards this end, I'd like to stress 3 things that I'd like you to remember tonight when it comes to consuming seafood while pregnant. And that's know what you're eating, know why you're eating it, and know how much you should be eating. First, I would like to tell you a little bit about myself. I used to be a research scientist at the Boston School of Medicine, as well as the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I hold 13 U.S. patents in the area of intravenous drug delivery systems and hormonal regulation for the treatment of cardiovascular diseases. I've also received the Nobel Prize for Medicine for my work in role that specialized hormones play in cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, and autoimmune diseases, as well as cancer. Those specialized hormones are called eicosanoids and are only generated from dietary fat. You can use nutrition to control these powerful hormonal responses by using the intravenous drug application principles. In essence, treating food like a drug. Instead of take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning, it'd be more like eat 2 bananas a day for the next week, and let's check your potassium levels and see if we can help your arthritis. My work deals specifically with how food is broken down and absorbed into the body. This is beneficial when you look at your food that you consume from a nutritional standpoint. You need to consume a certain amount of nutrients in order to function at an optimal level. Stress, depression, fatigue, these can all be signs that your body is not receiving proper nutrition. Certain nutrients help your body more than others. An example of this are omega-3 fatty acids. The American Pregnancy Association believes that omega-3 fatty acids are essential to the early brain development and visual development of newborn children. An adequate intake of omega-3 fatty acid helps inflammation, blood pressure, and the function of the kidneys as well as the gastrointestinal tract. I've spent the majority of my life examining how nutrients like omega-3 fatty acids are broken down and absorbed into your body, the impact that they have on your hormones, and the effect that this all has on the diseases that afflict your body. Now that you understand a little bit about myself and my work, let's dive into the subject at hand, the dangers of consuming seafood while pregnant. You have a few terms that come to mind when it comes to seafood consumption. The main ones are probably omega-3 fatty acids, methylmercury, and polychlorinated biphenyls, or PCBs. The reason you eat seafood is because it's a low-calorie, low-cholesterol source of protein and iron. Aside from all the wonderful culinary delights that exist with seafood, the main reason that we're here is to look at its benefits, and that means omega-3 fatty acids. The dangers to eating seafood, and the reason it poses such a danger, is because of the amount of methylmercury and PCBs that are found within the fish. To understand what you're eating, the first thing you have to do is understand the terms that come with it. I mentioned omega-3s earlier and gave a little explanation of them. But omega-3 fatty acids are a form of polyunsaturated fat that is not made by the body. The only way to get omega-3 fatty acids is in order to consume them through your food source. Omega-3s promote heart health, reduce joint inflammation, and are beneficial to the early stages of brain development in children. You want to consume about 2.5 grams of EPA and DHA a day, obtained from low toxin fish oil sources according to the FDA's regulatory guidelines. Now that we've become familiar with omega-3s, let's take a look at methylmercury. Mercury is a naturally occurring element, but its release is expedited and magnified by industrial pollution in the air, such as the burning of coal. Mercury is released into the air, where it will eventually fall with the rain and make its way into the groundwater, the water table, and the oceans. When mercury binds to an organic compound, it becomes methylmercury. Methylmercury is the mercury that's found in most of the fish. Methylmercury is a highly toxic substance that can build up in predatory fish. It bioaccumulates, which means that it is accumulated within organisms faster than it is expelled from the organisms. It also biomagnifies, which means that it increases in concentration levels as it travels up the food chain. This is one of the reasons that methylmercury is more prevalent inside of larger, older predatory fish. Mercury is an extremely toxic substance to people. It mainly affects the neural and the nervous networks. The last term is polychlorinated biphenyl, or PCBs. PCBs cover a range of industrial compounds that are used as lubricants, heat transfer fluids, and plasticizers. The harmful impact of PCBs on the environment has led to their production and their use being heavily restricted by since the 1970s by the FDA. They are especially deadly to fish and invertebrates and will stay in the food chain for many years to come because they do not break down quickly upon food consumption. This can lead to complications during pregnancy because the placenta allows for easy transfer of nutrients from mother to fetus through the bloodstream. Now that we've covered a couple of major terms, I'd like to turn the focus of this conversation back on track to the main point of this speech. Seafood is an extremely beneficial part of your diet when consumed in proper amounts. This opinion is shared and expressed by many prominent people and places such as the Mayo Clinic, Oceana.org, the head of the Department for Nutrition of Brasilia, Mr. Jose F. Doria, as well as the FDA. They all agree that consumption of seafood while pregnant can provide important benefits to the mother, the fetus, and the developing child. They also agree that there's an important decision when it comes to which types of seafood you should consume. The EPA and the FDA are good places to find information upon what types of fish should be avoided and which ones should be consumed. Some of the fish to consume that are safe and low in mercury include anchovies, herring, salmon, trout, shrimp, clams, and oysters. Some fish to avoid that have high levels of mercury include sharks, swordfish, grouper, sea bass, and albacore tuna. The FDA suggests that an average person consumes about 2 average meals or about 12 ounces of seafood per week, of low mercury seafood per week. Albacore tuna should be restricted to 1 6-ounce portion per week since it's higher in mercury content, and the other predatory fishes should just be avoided. There's been a rise in fish that are being farmed or pen raised as a way of creating a sustainable fish supply. Fish farming is a growing business, but it's not without its downsides. A 2003 report from the Environmental Working Group showed that farmed salmon in the U.S. had the highest levels of PCBs. A 2004 piece in the Journal of Science that looked at a study between U.S. farm-raised salmon and Pacific Atlantic salmon found that U.S. farm-raised salmon contained the highest levels of PCBs and methylmercury. The water that farmed fish are kept in is usually overcrowded and not fed by a running source. These pools of water accumulate toxins quicker than moving rivers or vast oceans. Farm-raised fish are raised in confined quarters, which leads to them becoming fatter fish because they're not as active. The lack of activity in the confined spaces leads towards there actually being a lower amount of omega-3 inside the fat, because omega-3 builds up inside of the fat deposits of fish that are active. Another big problem is that grocery stores are not required to label their fish, and most do not provide post-warning signs that the EPA suggests. There are a few choices other than asking the seafood manager where they're getting their stock from. You can take a visual inspection of the fish. Farm-raised fish will have a more dull orangish color and that won't be as vibrant as wild-caught salmon. Some grocers do display tags that show a difference between farm-raised and wild-caught fish. And another difference is the price. Farm-raised fish is usually far cheaper than wild-caught fish, so comparing the two can help you understand where the source from which your fish comes from. When making your decision on which seafood to eat, you should always be conscious of where it comes from. Farm-raised fish gives you the ability to know what kind of pollutants are in the area. You can check with the FDA for any contaminant risk in the area, or you can check with the local Field and Wildlife Office to see if the water's been tested for EPA approval. Seafood caught in the wild offers a lot more opportunities for major catastrophes, such as oil spills and industrial contamination. I'm talking about things like the BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico and the tidal wave that hit Japan and affected its nuclear reactors. For example, the Baltic Sea has been a dumping ground for industrial pollutants by the Northern Europeans for many, many years. There's also a lot of gaps in the research when it comes to the impact of seafood consumption during pregnancy. The data that's collected doesn't take individual dietary variables into account. These variables include understanding the correct portion size, and it assumes that the people who take the questionnaires are able to correctly identify how many portions of fish they've had. Other differences are other variables are different cultures. Different cultures have been exposed to different levels of exposure over the year. The Japanese people have a higher concentration of PCBs inside of their blood content because their diet is extremely high in fish intake. The size of a person, their habits, and their activeness will also all come into play when you are looking at how the fetus will be impacted by the toxins. Overweight mothers are more at risk because their higher fat content allows them to have more places for the toxins to store themselves. This makes overweight mothers more likely to absorb mercury and pass it on through the placental through the placenta to the fetus through the bloodstream. The entire diet matters when you're looking at how mercury is absorbed and how potent it is. Cilantro and garlic are natural supplements that will bind to mercury and flush it into the bloodstream and flush it out of the body. Brazil nuts are high in selenium, which naturally neutralizes the toxins in mercury. These results may become skewed in the research that's already been conducted if all these variables aren't taken into account. All the research, or lack thereof, goes to prove is that we need to understand the three things that I said I'd like you to remember after the end of tonight when it comes to consuming seafood while pregnant. Know what you're eating, know why you're eating it, and know how much you should be eating. What are you eating? Seafood that's low in mercury. Why are you eating it? Because omega-3s are essential to brain development and help reduce joint inflammation as well as cardiovascular disease. How much should you be eating? About 12 ounces per week. At the end of the day, knowledge is power. Understanding what you're eating can help you gain the benefits while minimizing risks. You cannot avoid eating, but you can avoid eating foods that will impact you and your child in a detrimental way. As I conclude this speech, I would like to encourage all of you to take this opportunity to take this into your own hands. I would like to encourage you all to write your local politicians and stress that the grocery stores inside of your area should be held accountable to correctly labeling the seafood and the product that they put out in the shelves. This can help you go a lot further towards understanding what you're eating, to understand why you're eating it, and to understand how much you should be eating. I'd like to thank you all once again and have a nice day.